Well, this message goes out specifically to the New Earth architects and the New Earth leaders and those that are missioned to be creating the new and stepping into the new realities. So first up, regardless of where you're at in your journey as you listen, I think first, most important thing to share is that there truly are. The greatest illusion that humans have been placed into is that they believe there's one reality, one Earth, and that's just not how the quantum works. Every reality exists, and every alternate parallel reality exists. Every thought that's ever been thought has created realities within the universe. There's no such thing as imagination. Imagination is literally accessing everything's real in our quantum universe. And so what that means, though, is that whatever we're subscribing to will be what we experience. And then we look at, are we truly creating reality? Are we choosing? Are we envisioning and tuning into realities that we wish to experience, and then receiving whatever the aligned action is and taking it? Or are we simply like a leaf blowing in the wind, and are we being created? And so we are either creating reality, or, the collective consciousness is creating it for us.
Yeah, so for me, it's a continuous process as it is for you. So that there is a peeling of layer after layer after layer, but then when you're tap into your higher consciousness, you have a different approach, and you relate differently with your reality. You relate differently with your body, with your existence. There is a quality of understanding beyond your mind of everything that is going on around you or in your reality. It's so going through this journey doesn't mean like, oh, I saw many star seeds, that they just want to go at the end of it. And there is no end of it, because evolution never ends. So the more we evolve, the deeper we go into the layers of our subconscious mind, and yes, we can deactivate and deprogram a lot of conditioning and belief system and a lot of templates from the third dimension. But we need to remember that we chosen to live in in duality, in an environment that is the first contact with this environment is that we are separate.
How do you envision this new Earth from the perspective of medicine, food system, or how would you like it to be?
This is a really important question, and I'm so glad you asked this, because so often we focus on what's wrong instead of focusing on how are we going to create this new world together? How are we going to create this new Earth? And I think the first thing is that we have to recognize that everything is interconnected, that we live in categories and isolation and, just breaking things up into their component parts rather than looking at it as a whole. Even in Western medicine, you go to a gastroenterologist, cardiologist, a psychologist, you might have a nutrition, you might have, you might even have a fitness trainer, and everybody is looking at their individual function. And it's great that there are people who are specialists in this, but who's looking at the whole? And then when we take this even further, you've got our food systems. I mean, there's, most doctors don't consider food as part of medicine, when this is probably the most important part of medicine. What we put into our body is what's going to create this body that we have and how we live. So I think the first thing is to recognize that everything is interconnected. We ourselves, as in our human body, I think, Ria, you listened to my talk where I talk a lot about this, where physically, this physical matter is only 1% of who we are.
Thanks so much for joining us on the episode today, Steve McNamara. Super cool to have you on the show. Had some incredible people. You are no different. I'm so happy that we're here having a chat. Super looking forward to it. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm just really, really excited. You guys are doing great in the world. So it's good to be here and add some value.
You've kind of morphed into now, and you mentor, you coach people. I just wonder if you could speak a little bit about that and, the kinds of people you help, the sort of work that you do. and sort of the different areas that you operate in, if that'd be okay.
That's why things like you mentioned earlier can be plugged in. Like it is anything from healing with its emotional work, whether it's just mindset work, whether it's physical health, like I'm the fittest and healthiest I've ever been. And whether it's the crypto stuff, it's fascinating how that's tied into it. Like it is really fascinating, but this is how it's evolved. So when you ask a question like, what do I generally tend to help people with now? It's getting people from A to B. And using the tools, the tools that I practice with every day.
How do I go from this life where I feel so much pain? I have no I have no reason to feel all of this. So this is what I'm thinking at the time. When we look at it, and we look at the reasons for the pain, that's true. But when we look at, how much it is truly possible to transform and to truly embody who we're here to be in this world, regardless of where we've come from. It's about, truly becoming the person that deep down on a soul level you're here to be, and not from a traditional route, not from, going down a very traditional path, which I tried to, it didn't work. It didn't work for me. It's like my soul was like, no, you're creating your own path. So really I documented a lot of it in hindsight and journaling, and really the book is sort of really supportive of, if you feel like your life's a mess, right? If you feel like you're a mess, you're not where you want to be in life, then how do you even begin? So yeah, I hope that's some insight.
Can you give us a little bit of an overview? What is this process of getting back to our sovereignty? Because I don't think we achieve sovereignty. I think sovereignty is our natural state. It's just going back to sovereignty. What does that look like practically?
Yeah, so it's reclaiming your power. It's basically, you have to go through this mental, energetic kind of spiritual growth first, I believe, because you have to basically remove all the shedding and the layers of the beliefs and the things and be open to new. It's coming into an alignment with your soul's essence and understanding what you're here to create, why you're on earth at this time. And because I have a lot of moral codes that I follow as well. I just don't put anyone in the private. You got to be part of that new earth. You got to be giving back. You got to be part of the solution, right? So, a lot of people that I put through this, we're connecting deeper to their soul's essence and really interpreting that, and then basically creating a business model that's deeply embedded through the connection to their soul's purpose, right?
What brings you joy? Is it a sunrise? Are you a morning person? Do you like to feed the birds? Do cats come around? Is it the animals? Or are you a night owl? Is it the stars and the moon and sunsets? What are you taking pictures of? That's a huge indicator for what is resonating with your soul. Because you're going to photograph what brings you joy, what makes you happy. So scroll through your pictures and see what you're taking photos of. For me, I'm a huge sunrise person, and trees in nature. So if you're following me on social media, you're going to be bombarded with all of those things. But yeah, scroll through your pictures and see what is it that catches your eye, and start with that. So if it's the sunrise and it's the colors, then, okay, what is it about the color? What is it about? Is it the time of day that I like because it's quiet and everything is just waking up? Or, is it at night when there's a blanket of darkness and you're kind of wrapped in this beautiful, even if you're in a city, there's still a blanket that wraps you at night when the stars are out and the moon is out. Even when it's cloudy and you can't see them, that energy is still there. So start little. Start with one thing that brings you joy, that resonates with you. It might be flowers, it might be gardening, it might be painting. If you're painting, what are you painting? What are the colors that you're painting? And what does that remind you of? And then you can start lengthening that string, and you'll get a little road that goes off to the right and a little path that goes off to the left. And that's how simple it is.
Before it communicates to matter, it usually tries to communicate to your consciousness. But if you're not open enough to listen, this is how it will get your attention. You're not going to get much window for it to listen and tell you, because if you're not open up to listen and to learn those karmic lessons, then it will go. And sometimes it will also speak through other people, where they're trying to point out maybe something to you in a relationship, in a social context, that usually those messages don't get heard. They're not significant enough. Then the matter goes crazy. And then sometimes also health gets really crazy.
I was going to talk about this. So it's like a sliding scale and it progresses. So first of all, matter's going bananas like this, trying to get your attention. And like I say, if we think back through our lives, try and think back now to a period that just felt like everything was going wrong. Doesn't matter what you did. Like I say, just stuff that wouldn't normally happen. Like you forget about the pan of pasta, which then kind of starts smoking and catches fire. You're dropping glasses left, right, and center. You're losing house keys or car, this kind of thing. And what I would then say is, if you don't get the hint at this stage, it progresses. And what then happens, it moves from matter speaking and it then moves physical. It comes into the body. So it starts off with minor ailments. So it could be skin conditions, rashes, eczema, allergies. There could be neck problems, joint problems, where you've got, muscular problems, aches, strains, pains, this kind of thing. So it's just kind of more physical irritations rather than anything being serious, right? Physical irritations. Perhaps it's acne that starts up again, skin conditions, that kind of thing. And this carries on for a while. Field is still like this. And it's like, for God's sakes, come and acknowledge this pattern that you've broken. And at this stage where it's gone physical, it might be like a year ago, it just depends really on how long this stuff takes to progress. So what's happening is then if you still don't get the hint, it progresses even further, where it becomes chronic disease, dis-ease with the field, the karmic field, dis-ease. You're at dis-ease with it, you're not at ease. And it becomes chronic at that point, and you've got then disease. And what then happens is, if you still don't get the hint, okay, the field is like, okay, the karmic field is like, okay, this soul has broke this pattern. They're not going to clock on in this lifetime. They've had more than enough chance to come back and acknowledge this. This soul's now going to cross over and come back and go through the same set of circumstances. And hopefully in the next lifetime comes to the conclusion where they can acknowledge it and learn the lesson. But the great thing is if we're on this kind of process of matter, physical dis-ease with the field before it becomes terminal, we can kind of reverse this. If we can get to the root cause of what's kicked it off for the karmic field, we can go right back. We can go to the Akashic records, because we need to go back into the past life, don't forget, because we need to find out where this karma has come from. So I'd go up with consent to your Akashic records. I would go through all of the past lives that are relevant. We would identify exactly where this has come from and exactly why the karma is there, because you need to understand the lesson. Once you understand the lesson, then together, because don't forget, I didn't create your karma. That wasn't anything to do with me. So therefore I can't acknowledge your field. I can't do that. You need to do it. So I would talk a client through one-on-one exactly what it is, explain what I'm seeing so they understand the lesson. And at that point, I coach and I talk the person through how to acknowledge the field correctly. Then once the field is acknowledged, what I'm then able to do is to identify exactly where that karma is in the karmic field of energy, because it's a big cloud of frequency. Looks like a big sausage in the shape of a cloud, and it's silvery and
eggs and sausage.
And it's silvery and blue is how I see it, like a big cloud of frequency. And there's a specific section of karma that I'll take out based upon on the record. Take this out, take it to one side. I'll neutralize it down to nothing with the power of my consciousness. Once that's neutralized, I come back I then repair the karmic field because I've taken a slice out, so I've then got 2 bits. I've created 2 sides of it. So bring it both back together so it knits back together as one piece. And then we drop down, and that's it. That's the karma neutralized, and the problems then melt away.
I have been blessed with this very specific ability of bringing the energies down to earth in the form of sound. But not just that, I really believe that as humanity, we can use this light language to build the new earth. It's a very, very powerful modality. And as a collective, we have an opportunity to evolve in understanding of sound technology, which is what light language represents. We can truly understand these sounds, and this can transform the way we communicate. So not only by communicating the meaning of words, but also by transferring energy between us in the form of sound. What's the point in speaking light language? What's the purpose of it? This was the question I've been asking myself for over 10 years before I discovered. Before I got connected to my guides who could help me with understanding actually what's the whole point in this. So there's the various functions of light language. One of them I've already mentioned. It's to help you identify your soul history and your starseed origins. And again, the most accurate way to have a full knowledge of your soul's history is to go to the Akashic Records. So go to Aaron. He's got many courses on Akashic Records, and we'll probably do a future episode of the podcast about the Akashic Record. But light language is an easy way to tell your starseed origins, because if you channel Arcturian, you will most likely be an Arcturian starseed. If you channel Pleiadian, you'll be Pleiadian starseed, and so on and so forth.
Dreaming is a really strong it's a strong, powerful spiritual power of how we, the lessons we have in our life. And as a mob, as a tribe, our dreaming story is a very important story, because in it has both the story of creation, but also the story of how to live right way and how to keep everything alive, which is our mission. We are entering, in fact, we're in it. A new dreaming is coming, but we're in it now. So the new dreaming is a time-ish where white fella, black fella walk together, red fella, yellow fella walk together in the new dreaming as one under our original law, LORE, under our original, Aboriginal law or Indigenous law, depending on which part, how you use it.
When my grandmother passed away, before that she had Alzheimer's for about 5 years, and she was living in Argentina and I was living here in Melbourne, and I would know exactly what was going on with her. It started with my grandma, who as a child I had a great connection. I would just feel her. I would actually be able to go and visit her. I knew exactly when she passed, before she passed. And then I had her come and visit me as a spirit form many times. And she would always tell me, I was working in the corporate world, and she will come and sit with me in my bed and say, that's not your path. You need to start questioning stuff. And I did. I refused for a while, and then eventually I promised to my grandma that I will start my inner process, my getting to know myself, moving away from all the, conditioning from university and those ways of thinking. And I just started exploring different things, and it all came together super quick. At that moment, the moment I decided to actually start tuning in with myself, was like a massive thing just open and downloaded. And that's kind of how all my abilities started to come online.
So that's where I started down in my journey with money mindset stuff. And I really had to do my own personal work to figure out, because I was like, the last thing I want to do in my life is take this beautiful inheritance, a lot of which I have not received yet. Like, it's not mine in my hands yet. But I know is coming. Right. And the last thing I want to do is be that person who spends it. I want to be the third generation who takes that and, increases the legacy. And how can I take that legacy and make it even greater in my own way? And so this is where I started to really start to look at, like, okay, so there's a lot of people who teach manifestation work, but there's not a lot of people who teach generational wealth. And how do we take this money? How do we energetically learn to hold the money while also being in flow? Like, this is an interesting piece, right? Because we're either in scarcity and deeply holding, like hold it, don't let it go. Or we're in this, like, people will go to the overflow, all of a sudden they've got it and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it just goes right through. Right? And so, like, there is a dance to find the middle. And it's definitely been part of my journey. It's part of what I help other people with in this and in the energetics of it. And then eventually I ended up writing my book, The New Wealth, and I broke down. So I talk about magnetizing abundance, holding your wealth, and leaving a legacy. So I started to break down these aspects. And from that book, the multi-layered piece to it was looking at, well, if we have the ability to hold our wealth and we have the ability to, like, look at how do we create legacy wealth, then it ultimately becomes infinite abundance. Like, how can we actually create infinite abundance? And so I was in this world of, like, infinite abundance and, like, daydreaming about it. And it was a daydream, really, because at some level, like, it's also kind of like, I don't know, like, is that true? Is that real? And then I'm like, it's sitting here in this quantum field conversation, right? Of course it is. Everything is possible. And of course we're always looked after. So of course that can happen. And so that's when I started to also look at the crypto system. And the crypto system, to me, which at the time when I was looking at it, it is a very volatile space. And I reached out to some crypto mentors that I have, and I was like, can you guys help? Can I refer to you in the book in case people want to come into this world? But it still wasn't the answer until I found DeFi, which is a part of the crypto space. And it is the borrowing and lending where you can actually take your money, put it in as like an asset, and see it compounding interest grow. So it's a stable asset that grows. And all of a sudden, everything landed in my body. And I was like, oh my God, it's already here. And so for me, when you ask me, like, some of the lessons, like, to me, it's a lot about how do we energetically expand to be able to hold our wealth, to be able to grow it. And now we have a system that allows us to break free of the corrupt banking system, move into this, as we talk about the new earth. I call it the new wealth, but the new earth. And we move into this new aspect. Like, there is now a financial system that is here, that is being built, that will allow us to have a completely free, decentralized, I say free as in freedom, decentralized banking system. I don't know that it's the be all end all. I'm kind of also of that, if we're in the quantum realms, I kind of go to, like, do we need any of this at all? And my human self likes money, likes to know that I'm safe and that there's money behind me and that I'm going to have a roof over my head and yada, yada. But in the quantum realms, do we need any of that? Well, right. So I don't know if it's the be all end all. I don't know if it's like some gateway into some other thing, but right now it's this really beautiful place that I love teaching about and exploring to help people to be able to literally create infinite amounts of abundance.
There's this way that I feel like I think we all do when we have a channeling gift, like there's something to share that's important to our evolution. And I'm feeling it really strongly. And I know a lot of astrologers are, it's not just me. I think we've all since 2020 been super activated. And even before 2020, we were waiting for this Pluto-Saturn conjunction to happen because we knew something huge was going to take place that year. a lot of people thought because Mars was going to go retrograde that we might have World War III. And so everyone was just waiting. So it's not just me, it's the people who have the gift to interpret the stars are all really wanting to help ground us in to the sky story so that we understand it's a necessary evolutionary process and there's nothing to be afraid of, versus that ungrounded sense of there's just chaos and I'm scared, so it feels like a duty.
So basically by telling the sky story, as you beautifully describe it, you are helping the collective to understand the bigger picture. So it doesn't seem as random. And
yes,
it's almost like, well, it's all there in the sky. It makes perfect sense, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's a perfect way of explaining it. Like currently we have Mars and Pluto together in Capricorn, the sign of government. And right now we do. So it's not a long transit. It lasts about 2 weeks, but we're also at the time of recording this just on the threshold of that invasion in the East. And so Mars is the god of war and Pluto is the god of the underworld. Pluto's also at the degree of the USA return. And so it tells us that we're going into an underworld portal, and war is the vehicle that's taking us there. But when we go with Pluto, there's something more. There's some truth that's going to be revealed. Pluto's a planet of evolution. And so he takes us down and in and helps us to transform whatever's toxic. He's a detoxifier. He's a purger. And so he wants to help us clear out whatever is unhealthy, which is an uncomfortable process, but it's necessary. It's part of the pruning process for the next steps in evolution.
As a divine feminine creatrix and a priestess and a healer and all of this stuff, a mystic, I'm actually not designed to work very hard at all. And it's funny because when I was looking to create my life 10 years earlier, when I wrote down everything that I want to create on a list, it was like, I literally want to lie by a pool all day drinking coconuts and get paid to be me. And guys, that's literally what I do now. I literally get paid to lie by the pool and I do grid work and I channel. And when I do my client calls or activations, it's just me showing up as me. And I never feel like I'm working. And so my genius, my zone of genius is showing up and talking about what I'm passionate about, or being in the flow with something creative, or like I said, being in a trance. I spend most of my time in trance states, doing work in other realms, which doesn't look like work, right? So when I was a coach, I was like looking at what the industry had taught me and what society had taught me, and what I'd learned my whole life as this super overachiever, really smart kid, getting A's in everything that I would do. That was just how I was hardwired to perform, to succeed, to achieve, which is super masculine energy. And I deconditioned all of that. And I was like, I need to look at how I'm going to run my business from a more feminine angle. And so I started to, decondition all these ideas about time and about hustling and workflow and structure and all of this stuff. And I started to just follow my passion and follow my intuitive downloads and follow and surrender and trust, right? And these are all very feminine qualities. I want to go back because I missed something really important when you said deconditioning the masculine and how I worked through that. It was through working with these feminine archetypes. So with the dark goddess particularly, as women, and actually as men as well, we're taught to not feel our emotions. We're taught that our emotions are too much, that our chaos is too much, that who we are is too much. And working with the dark goddess enabled me to, and the wild woman as well, a really good archetype, to go in and feel all of the trauma, not only from this life, from all my past lives, all of that trauma, all of that too muchness, all of the crazy that society tells us to put a lid on, to shut down, right? And so me operating from this masculine for so long was kind of me trying to control and micromanage and keep a lid on all of this me that wanted to come out and be expressed.
if we've reached mastery in when stories, it's like the information about, for me, like the information on Arcturus and Sirius where I reached mastery is huge. It's like it's so vast, it's so broad. So it's like it's very easy for me to connect with that, and to connect also with civilizations on Earth that, you know, where I was that, or when I was a human, you know, connecting with them and so on. So it's like it's more vivid in my visions and so on. It's like it's instant. If I need to connect there, bam, I'm there. You know, it's like the flow of information, because the flow of information is like massive in the Oversoul network. But if I connect to, for example, Andromeda or Pleiades, or like where my soul is actually less there, but it's at the moment, it's very different frequency. It's more like active, and it's less this vastness. But then I also connect with many frequencies where I don't project, where I haven't projected. So like, and that's yet another way of feeling the information. So like for me, it's really like the way I feel the information gives me information of my own journey. And also because I ask my Oversoul network, you know, like when I connect to Isis or Hathor or Green Tara, or, you know, Ascended Masters, Jesus or Babaji and so on, our dragon frequency is like, why do I get such precise channeling and information and teachings from them? And he says like, oh, because you are sitting at the council together. It's not because you are projecting. So it's like, oh, so that's more like receiving teachings in these lifetimes, but also in that realm. It's like my Oversoul network is projecting in the quantum in a space that has no name. A bit like, you know, if it was to be a Galactic Federation, it's not a planet, it's just a space that has the name Galactic Federation. Well, I'm not a Galactic Federation member at all, but it's like I sit with another council, and this other council has all of these frequencies co-creating together. And as I see myself, I sit with them as just one of them.
Last year, something just ignited in my soul, and something ignited in my field, and it was just time, you know, like the infrastructures were there. We know how to build something like this. We've already built, you know, something like this for adults, yet in a different in a different way. And I had the time, the resources, and I'd launched a foundation, and the foundation wanted to do this. And I feel like that was part of it too. It was an ascension journey for me, my own consciousness level, because this wanted to be built inside of a very different grid. It wanted to be built not inside the public grid of business, or, you know, it wanted to be built in something totally different. And the Oneness Foundation is outside of any pre-created grids on this planet. It's a fifth dimensional, you know, like templated playground to be able to code the world, to really anchor and stabilize new earth realities of higher consciousness. And so as soon as the Oneness Foundation was birthed, this birthed through it. And literally a 20-year journey, you know. Sometimes it's kind of fascinating because I speak to people who, you know, I also support people in building their beautiful, like, you know, 5D businesses, new earth businesses. And often they'll have a dream like this. They'll have some form of contribution, some form of legacy, some form of something they're wanting to do. Yet it's, you know, like we get to do that when we have the resources and the infrastructures, when we have the abundance. And it's so awesome to have taken the journey that I've taken to be in a place where we can comfortably afford to launch something like this, calling volunteers, and it feels so great.
Yeah, I know that many people are entangled in religion, concepts and aspects. Other people are completely rebellious and atheists and so on. And I guess just walking the path will ultimately show you and trusting that you are exactly where you are in that moment is what really helps. Like not thinking that, okay, why, you know, people see these kind of podcasts and these kind of shows and stuff, and they're like, oh, I'm not yet there, or I wish I would be there. You are exactly where you are right now. And the fact that you see this is showing you how much more is available, and you can just open your mind, open your heart to allow life in more, right? But trust that where you are is, you know, perfect. And there's all the steps ahead will be shown. Of course, the guidance, the perfect teachers at the right timing come, and all the instructions basically the universe will deliver. It's our ally. It has to. It's beautiful how life shows you eventually, even if you don't know, right? You just surrender, follow the flow, and you'll be guided, man. Like, yeah.
And I know, and it's sometimes it's just being happy for the universe to be in charge and just listening to what comes through, and like you say, just interpreting how you sense in the field and reading the energy and things like this. And it's kind of what we've discovered since coming to Costa Rica. We've never, like I said, we've never been here before. Couldn't speak the language. We're kind of part ways to being fluent in Spanish. Putting the effort in doing that. But it's just kind of, it's interesting how your kind of mission and work just kind of evolves, right? And when you're exactly where you're meant to be at the exact time that you're meant to be there, it's kind of fitting back in. So I kind of, I'm excited for the future. I'm not sure how you feel.
Yes, me too, definitely. And to be honest, it feels like I know where I'm going, but at the same time, I don't want to know, man. I think like when I let the universe do its magic, I always end up in a better place, energetically, physically. So I don't want to control anymore. That's what the beauty of this thing is. It's like the more I go on the journey, the least I even desire to control it, because I just see how the universe is bringing so much faster the things I want, or aligns the momentum, the synchronicities,
Why the Akashic Records? What's so fascinating about it?
That's a very good question. It's trying to put it into words, really. It's I suppose it just comes down to personal preference. If you want to put it simply, I've got a talent for working in there. I've got an innate ability to navigate the realm in the way that I do. I enjoy working with people on a one-to-one basis, so that's extremely rewarding as well. And I just find myself, the more I work in there, I just find myself drawn to it and drawn to the expansiveness of it. And I know it's one element, but it's as close to source as you can get. And when we consider all the parts of the Akashic realm, it just blows my mind. And it's just, I guess, my favorite area to work in.
What are the Akashic Records? And also, where do they sit in relation to the Akashic realm? Because not everybody heard about Akashic realm, but probably many listeners would have heard about the Akashic Records.
Well, the Akashic Records are probably the most famous descriptive or name of all of it. Everybody would have heard of, pardon me, the Akashic Records. The Akashic realm, however, is kind of less spoken about. And if you were to go on Instagram and have a look at hashtags and try and hashtag Akashic realm, I think in the whole of Instagram, there's been 5 hashtags of Akashic realm, and I probably did 2 of them. So it's not that openly spoken about, but it's just to try and understand that the Akashic realm is like the overall space that contains everything. Think of it like a big jigsaw puzzle with many, 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 many different elements and pieces. And the Akashic Records would be like 2 pieces of the overall thing. So the Akashic Records are like, they're really magnificent when we go in there, but they're a very small element of the overall picture, which is this sort of puzzle of the Akashic realm. So that's the main difference. Usually, how karma and breaking a karmic pattern or experiencing a karmic pattern, what it usually does, it brings stress to your life, because usually, I'm not saying it's always the case, because there's always room for different ways for things to work. So nothing is absolute, right? But in my experience working with hundreds of different people and coaching like so many souls, when we experience a karmic pattern, it's nothing pleasant. So it's always like a stressful situation in our life. So how can it have an effect? So if you're experiencing a karmic pattern in your life, now we can experience different kinds of patterns. There's also something called ancestral patterns, but we're not talking about this today. We're going to be talking specifically about karmic patterns. And karmic patterns usually show up as a result of a karmic lesson that you need to learn, usually from a past life. Could be in this lifetime, depends what's happened, but more often than not, it's going to be from a past lifetime.
I want to share with you something. For many years since I started since I was activated as a trans channel for the Arcturian Council of Light, like 2016. For many years, I was only able to operate in the fourth and fifth dimensional grids. I was not able to connect the third dimensional grids. Once my big shift happened, I was not able to actually go back in any way, shape, or form. And what I noticed is that, within the fourth and the fifth dimensional grids, it's amazing. You start to find people that are on the same frequency realities. There are many frequency keepers and, holders, and there is a lot going on. But then that world of the fifth dimension becomes a little bit saturated because, we start actually to activate in between us, and we start to activate ourselves. And it's like we are all at the same level of consciousness and we are creating something. And what I have noticed, and for me, it's like I was thinking, whoa, I'm not able to operate in the third dimension, and I'm only there, and I'm just connecting to, a small number of people, and I'm not even able to find the words and to bridge, to the verbal communication, anything with the people in the third dimension. So I felt, for many years, I felt like I'm in a bubble, and I was in my bubble for many years, until what happened with me in Kauai, until my transformation on the first island of Hawaii, where, I was just mentioned what I went through. Like my full descendance of my higher self into my physical body allowed me to have a multidimensional experience of the ascension process and be able to actually go into the third dimension and not be affected anymore by the 5G and the grids, and not be affected by the densities of the third dimension, and also go in the fourth dimension, in the fifth dimension, have a multi-dimensional experience, not a unidimensional experience I had before. Because before I was only in the fifth dimension, I was in my own bubble and everything was love and light, and I was activating people that were actually the same or closely at the same level of consciousness. And then I was thinking, what about the billions of people that are unawakened? And, there are people that are waking up, then they don't know where to start, So, so when this, my embodiment happened, I actually realized, like, wait a minute, I can actually live in a city like Honolulu now and not be affected by 5G, not having protection fields, not having Tesla, things on my phone, not having any gadgets, It's like I can just be and, like hold my frequency, hold, the purity of my transmission. And I just realized that I was, it's like the volume, or, you are turning up or down. And I'm just turn the volume down. I don't have to shift into another version of myself. I'm staying here and I'm just adjusting, or the environment is adjusting after me. So I don't know exactly how I made it back into being able to bridge the third dimension, the fourth and the fifth. But, I find myself in situations where I'm able actually now to communicate with people that are not awakened.
And if I take a step back, it's when I think about all these beautiful energetic beings and that when you got Source, the angels, the galactics, the ascended masters, it's they all we all go back to one source, and it is exactly what you're saying. You have to experience it. It's based on your cultural experience, your racial experience, even your religious experience. It's through those lenses that you explore these energies. And there are some universal truths, archangel roles and their colors and all that. But at the end of the day, it's how you experience it. And you're talking about that warmth. It's so true. Angel energy is warm. It's a difference between spirit energy, which is cold, and it can sometimes be a bit hard to channel archangels because I used to live in Darwin and now Brisbane, and it's very hot naturally. So the whole time you're just fanning yourself. But yeah, I know people that feel the angels, they see them or they hear them. So yeah, it's very much, it's your own experience. But yeah, and it's all from your heart.
So how
if someone is listening to it and is wondering, well, I want a piece of action, I want to contact the angels, how would you do it? You know, you mentioned the heart space. Is that the portal through which you communicate? Do you chat with your angelic team like you normally, you know, like you would to a friend? Is there any specific ceremonies or rituals you use? How do you communicate with angels?
So you're right. So for me, it's the heart center. That is the part where I very much channel angelic energy. I go up here for my Arcturian guides. And the first step for that is you can, you know, find ways in which to open that heart center. And that is to be very present and do activities that make you happy in the moment. Angel energy is very present energy. It's almost like if you want to connect with an angel, be an angel. So be kind to people, be grateful, be in the moment. Start to actually embody that angelic energy. And that's when you'll start attracting that, you know, that like becomes like. And then from there, there are heaps of resources and books and cards out there of the different angels. Have a look through them and see, all right, I love that angel. This one looks amazing. And then use the color psychology. You know, Archangel Ariel is pink. She's with the animals and nature. So spend time with in nature. You know, have maybe a pink stone on you. Do something nice for an animal. You know, do something that embodies her. And that's when you'll start to bring her in, and you'll notice that life just shifts a little bit, because they are here to help us with our highest good at all times. So yeah, always stay present, stay kind, and work from that heart center. And that's pretty much the first step I ever say to people about angels, is embody them, and then they will follow. So.
Nervous system regulation, defense mechanisms, it's really popular to talk about at the moment. People are loving talking about it, but these pieces weren't landing. And when I finally got this, I went from the way that I used to manifest was I would manifest my dreams and desires and all the great things that I would set my mind to, yet at the same time, I was creating so much chaos. And it was literally like I was living consistently in duality. I was having extreme highs and extreme lows simultaneously within the same kind of context. Like I would be having my best months in business. My cat gets hit by a car and all that money I've made goes to saving my cat. I'm falling in love. I'm now had a fight with my best friend where we're not talking for 6 months. I'm constantly in these loops. And I was like, why the hell is this happening? Like, despite my best conscious efforts of trying to control what I was doing, there was this whole other aspect that seemed completely out of my control. And it wasn't until I understood nervous system regulation, because our nervous system is literally the electrical pulses that we're emitting into the quantum field in terms of our vibrational point of attraction. Because we don't attract what we are, we attract who we are. And when we can start to understand what this means from a defense mechanism and how our behavioral tells show us that our nervous system's out of whack, that's when the real power happens. And that's when it allows us to ascend into higher states of consciousness and evolve beyond where we are with more grace and ease, and also allows us to move in a more direct path towards our desires. So we're continuing to expand in love and joy and abundance. And that doesn't mean that in those processes we don't have to feel some emotions we may have been avoiding, yet the path is a lot smoother, it's a lot more joyful, and it just creates so much more compassion and empathy for yourself.
Human design is considered a channeled system. It was channeled in the late 80s, and the guy that channeled it basically kind of was on a spiritual journey. He basically hit that wall I think a lot of us hit in our life with what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What's the meaning of it all? But because of just the way that I guess like the economy was at the time and just being a dude, he was able to quit his job, leave his family, go on this worldwide spiritual quest. And when he was traveling, he was studying with different spiritual practitioners. He was working with different metaphysical teachers. I also heard he was doing a little plant medicine, little psilocybin, little DMT. Basically, he had that breath and space and time to explore, to marinate in these different practices. And then he ended up in Ibiza in Spain, and he had this 8-day download, which was the human design system. So it pulls from 4 ancient wisdom traditions that by themselves are amazing, groundbreaking, just really rich spiritual practices. But human design actually combines all four of them together. So it pulls from the chakras from the Hindu Brahmin tradition. It pulls from the I Ching, which is really important to like Buddhist, Taoist, Confucian, different traditions, and from the Chinese. Pulls from Western astrology, and it pulls from Kabbalah's Tree of Life from Jewish mysticism. So it actually finds a way to bring all of those four wisdom traditions together into one coherent system that helps us. It provides us with a map of how our energy kind of moves and flows. So how we impact other people, how other people impact us, just on that energetic vibrational level.
What made you shift and take interest in this practice?
Yeah. So when I left college, I joined a nonprofit here in the United States where I was teaching in a low income community. And I started off in education, and I did like all of the things I was quote unquote supposed to do as, you know, a person entering their first career. I was like taking the promotions and stepping into like whatever was the next step for me. But I was super inherently unhappy. And like flash forward, I spent 15 years in K-12 education, and where there are parts of it that were incredibly fulfilling, the more quote unquote successful I got, just based on like capitalism's, I guess, version of success, the more miserable I was, the more disconnected I felt from my own spirituality, my own purpose, my own just integrity. And finally, I ended up having this massive autoimmune crash. Basically, like my body was in this fight or flight, like adrenal just storm for so many years that it just kind of decided, like it pulled the emergency brake and was like, you need to stop. I mean, I look back and I'm like, I can't believe I thought working 80 hours a week was like sustainable and normal. No, absolutely not. So I quit. And I actually, at that point in time, like really didn't know what was going to come next. I didn't know if I was going to step back into education or what I was going to do. And so I wanted something that would help me connect back to who I was, because literally when I left my corporate job, because that's kind of, I ended up started in public service and ended up in the private sector. I remember looking in the mirror and just like not recognizing myself and just feeling super disconnected from like me. And I was like, well, I need to figure out something that's going to bring me back to that. And that's how I discovered human design. When I was a little kid, I was the one in the metaphysical section of the library, like taking out books on like astrology and astral projection. So like, I kind of just dipped back into my spiritual toolkit and was like, what can I utilize to find myself again? So when I found human design, literally, I was using it as a system to figure out what's my next step. Like, how do I start making decisions that are more in my integrity, more aligned with who I am, like better informed, that are going to be more successful. And once I realized the wisdom this system had for us and how, you know, just the variety and of information that was out there, I was like, I want to share this with people. This is transformative. I want to help people transform their lives. And so it actually turned into this being the thing that I ended up doing. It was like not what I intended, but it's a beautiful surprise.